I have devoted my whole life to the study of this amazing animal, the chicken. Amongst immersive sims and the games of Arkane Studios, Arx Fatalis tends to get lost in the shuffle. Arx Fatalis, Latin for Fatal Fortress, was released by Arkane Studios in late 2002 on PC and late 2003 on Xbox, the first game released by Arkane Studios. While Arx Fatalis was well received critically, it didn't sell overly well, but has a cult following and its reputation has grown over time. Videos like Mandalore got me to check out Arx Fatalis, and I'm glad I did. While a bit rough around the edges, Arx Fatalis is an ambitious, memorable game that does many interesting things, and a fantastic first effort from a studio that I consider to be one of the better studios in the industry. In the late 1990s, Rafael Colantonio, who's one of the first employees at EA France, decides to start Arkane Studios with 4 friends. A fan of Ultima Underworld, he pitches to Paul Neuwirth, CEO of Looking Glass Studios, who developed Ultima Underworld and hold half the rights to the IP along with Electronic Arts. Paul loves it and sets up Arkane with a pitch to EA for Ultima Underworld 3. EA isn't interested in how it currently stands, but is open if they're willing to play ball and make some changes that EA wants. They give up pursuing the Underworld license and instead make the spiritual successor to Ultima Underworld that they want to make. It's interesting to think that would have happened if Arkane Studios had decided to play ball with EA. Seeing how things have been since then, I think we know how it'd play out. How's BioWare still kicking? So Arkane moves forward with Arx Fatalis and flirts with a few close calls of going under while seeking out publishers, and manages to get the game out in 2002. While the game doesn't sell overly well, it does have a following. Richard Garriott, creator of Ultima, is a big fan. At the 2003 Game Developers Conference, Arkane was approached by Valve, who were looking for customers for their upcoming Source engine. What that would lead to, however, is a video for another day. If you are thinking about playing Arx Fatalis, then you should get the Arx Libertatis mod. It helps Arx Fatalis play nicely with modern systems. There's also Arx Insanity Overhaul that was recently released as a major overhaul of the game, although for this playthrough I didn't check it out, but it does look interesting. Links to both will be in the description. We start off with choosing our character and our stats. Don't go with the bow. Arkane doesn't seem to like bows. Same case in our next release, Dark Messiah. Apparently there's a couple of them in the game and one is all the way down to level 7 and can be very easy to miss. Well, that's an interesting start to the game. We get a pretty basic tutorial that does the job, and since we have no memory of anything, we get some exposition of what's going on in this world. It's the fish out of water cliche, but it gets the job done and gives a reason why our character doesn't understand this world around us. Arx Fatalis has a unique UI that does take a bit to get used to, but after a while, you maybe find yourself wishing more games took this approach. Feels like a more refined, user-friendly UI of System Shock 2. Different keys will allow you to enter different modes, like combat, magic, or allow us to interact with the world around us or our inventory. As opposed to most modern games where these kind of things would be buried behind menus upon menus, Arx Fatalis takes a non-intrusive, minimal approach. Having shortcuts for commonly used things like health and mana potions is also greatly appreciated. There is an odd design choice where when transitioning between levels, an icon will pop up in the top right corner of the screen that we need to click in order to either move up or down to the next level. Curious to why they settled with that. Arx Fatalis does some really interesting things when it comes to its interface on how we can interact with objects. For example, let's take a look at food. We can't eat ribs or fish uncooked, so we have to go warm it up. Toss it by fire, let it heat up, and enjoy. Get some flour, water, toss in the fire, cook some bread. Take your weapon, put it on a forge to repair it up. Same thing goes for making potions. Study up by reading a book on it, follow the steps, do what you need to do to make a potion.
Real alchemist.
Buying and selling goods isn't conventional either. Instead, we drag and drop items in chests and shops to buy and sell our goods. Arx Fatalis is arguably most known for its magic system. Throughout the game, we'll find runes, which when combined together, we can cast spells. Each rune will have a corresponding term for it. For example, some runes translate to create, negate, improve, reduce, life, death, fire, ice. You will unlock spells as you collect runes and level up, but there's still plenty to discover on your own. The manual can spoil it a bit and give you a list, but if you start experimenting, you'll discover spells that won't be listed otherwise, and if your magic skill is high enough. So be sure to spend quite a number of points into magic. Each time we cast a spell, we have to draw the corresponding rune symbols with the mouse, and it works, for the most part. The patch does a pretty good job, but there's still some issues every once in a while where they wouldn't register or I draw the wrong symbol by accident. For example, Fireball, a spell you'll likely be making use of quite frequently. There were many times where on the last rune, instead of recognizing my line as the projectile, it would recognize it as the movement, which is a Z. Arx Fatalis allows you to precast spells in 3 slots, so you don't have to worry about failing in your drawing of spells in combat. It is a godsend, though I wish we could save more than 3 at a time. 5 would have felt like a much more reasonable number. And on that note, let's discuss combat. It's pretty simplistic, but it does the job. Spells are our best bet in combat, although we can get the job done with melee weapons. We have a lot of the common tropes of enemies in the style of dungeon crawlers like rats, spiders, and a lot of human combatants. You can make use of stealth for double damage, backstabs, make use of the lighting system to hide in the shadows, although in my playthroughs I haven't done a stealth-based build, so I can't really say much on it. While Arx Fatalis makes plenty use of fantasy tropes in its setting, it does have its own spin of it and has a narrative that helps it stand out with its enduring charm, a place that's both familiar and alien to us. Due to the sun going out, the various races of the world sought shelter in the underground. The underground was once occupied by the dwarves, who have long since disappeared. We have a world full of humans, goblins, trolls, and other races here. Notable highlights include the Sisters of Eternum, a cross between a woman and snake, and notable magic users in this world.
Which mentions crows, and so Arx. It may be useful to you.
The distinction between races are also helped by some quality voice acting that helps not only to convey the aspects of these races, but the qualities and characters of the individuals that we encounter in our time.
Can't humans see? Who you think you talking to? Me, King of Arx? No friend!
So you're the Guardian. Unless you prefer your human name, Shigar.
I know all this only too well.
And the casting director for the game was Stephen Russell, best known as Garrett from the Thief games. Finding that for our character, this is the voice actor's only role which I found listed. He's kind of an oddball.
I'm Shigar. Yes, I'll keep this name for now. What is this guild of travelers?
On the subject of sound, Arx Fatalis has some of the best sound design and ambient tracks that build up the mood this side of the Thief games, which shouldn't come as a surprise as the composers of the ambient music did work on the Thief games. Each rune symbol has a corresponding sound that sounds akin to a caveman. And each spell we cast do have distinct sounds, or the sound of a spell failure, which happened plenty of times when trying to cast Fireball. Some of the sound highlights include is when you gotta go fast, casting the speed spell. For some reason it reminds me of the Power Rangers theme. There are 8 levels that we'll be making our way through in Arx Fatalis, revisiting many and opening up new areas as the game goes on. We're also given the spell early on to make use of teleporters that are located on each level so we could work back and forth. They're well placed and each level is small enough so that we're never a far distance away from a teleporter. Each level is distinct and well laid out, and as the game goes on, we'll be unlocking more and more areas as we make our way through the main quest. The map is a bit iffy to follow, but due to levels being tightly packed as opposed to spread out, strong art direction, level design, you'll likely be having your minimap off for most of the time and only need to pulling it up every once in a while. Too bad most games now rely on the old arch nemesis of the quest arrow to navigate. For the most part, Arx Fatalis doesn't block your way down to certain levels, so if you want to go down there earlier, the choice is completely yours, although enemies will likely make short work of you. The story has a lot of nice twists and turns that help to raise the stakes and catch us off guard, and builds to a satisfying ending. A notable thing about Arx Fatalis is that there are no dialogue options. We don't have any say of what our character says. We'll also get some still cutscenes to help flesh out the world around us.
Illicid have earned a reputation as fierce and unstoppable warriors, and now I've seen it with my own eyes.
Rituals in involving animal sacrifices. Perhaps it was Urzog who was behind Fallen's murder.
Very well, Guardian. I see that you have rejected my generous offer.
Perhaps our next meeting will see you bitterly regretting your decision.
There's a lot of interesting lore in the world of Arx Fatalis that looks like it would have been explored more in the sequel had Arkane made one, but more on that shortly. When it comes to the quest, it's up to you on how you want to tackle it. For example, one quest has you going deep into a crypt to obtain a shield in exchange for an item. Or if you're good enough, you can either sneak or just kill your way through and take that ring yourself. This is a Bethesda game which ensures that key characters can't be killed. The quests have a lot of nice twists and turns, a lot of fun things to explore and find, though some of the puzzles can be a bit frustrating and obtuse. There's one area in the crypt where to move forward you have to collect 6 items, and I had the unfortunate fate of finding only 5 of them. You need to look upward to find that last one. The last area of the game takes away your powers and makes you helpless against a relentless creature. Instead, you need to make use of your wits and surroundings to deal with it. It's a nice change of pace, even if it's a bit trial and error and does stretch on a little too long. While there's not tons of optional quests compared to other titles, Arx Fatalis does have some interesting side quests that you could pursue. One notable quest involves finding a kidnapped girl. You'll come across a group of priests congregating to sacrifice her, which you need to stop. And this quest is a little bit buggy, however, that if you kill off the priest before they reach your destination, you won't be able to save her in time. There's a lot of interesting things that you could easily miss in the world, including this one book talking about chickens, which opens up an interesting questline. So while a bit rough around the edges, Arx Fatalis is a fantastic game that's well worth your time, an amazing start for what would become one of the better game studios in the industry. The game does have a fair amount of unexplored ideas in regards to the story, but we never got an Arx Fatalis 2. So what happened? Well, here's from the excellent no-clip documentary on the history of Arkane Studios, and how Arx Fatalis 2 nearly saw the light of day with Bethesda as a publisher, as opposed to getting Dark Messiah.
Etc. That was really painful. So we did it because, funnily enough, the alternative was Bethesda. the Todd Vaughn, I love Todd Vaughn, who saw the game like 2 weeks before Ubisoft signed it. He said, "Give me 2 weeks," and then he called me, or he sent me an email, kind of like a day after I had signed with Ubisoft. I could not wait anymore. I would have loved back then to do it with Bethesda, but eventually went with Ubisoft back then.
Would that have been an Arx Fatalis 2 then, or would it have been a Elder Scrolls?
No, it would have been it would have been Arx Fatalis 2.
And as much as I love Dark Messiah and do expect a future video on it shortly, I am curious to see what would have happened with Arkane had they went with Bethesda and we ended up with Arx Fatalis 2. Would Arkane have gone under the ZeniMax wing much quicker than it did? It's too bad we never got to see what that would have looked like.
Hi.
Everything all right?
Is everything all right?
Hi.
Hi.
I saw a rat this morning. It was this big, I swear.
Is everything all right?
It wasn't even scared of me. Hi.
Hi.
Hey.